Purple Heart Homes presents Putting the Pieces Back Together, a forum for veterans and the community to connect. Here are your hosts, veterans John Galena and Brad Borders.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Welcome to Putting the Pieces Back Together.
2/22/22.
Yes,
the only time in your life it'll ever be like that.
We've had a lot of those kind of dates.
It's a numerical
over the years.
oddity.
Man, you ought to think I'd be jumping for joy,
I know,
right?
right? It's your love language. Everybody doesn't know John Galena's love language is numbers. Mine is acts of service. But yours is numbers.
Yeah.
2/22/22. That's the date.
Mine's really counting the number of acts of service that you and the rest of the Purple Heart
Is that
Homes
what it
team
is? Okay,
complete
thank you.
every month, right?
Thank you.
And give a big shout out to Matt Stevenson and our project management crew over at Purple Heart Homes, completing a project and getting out there working with
one of the things
North Wake chapter.
Let's focus on Matt for a second, because Matt's an Army veteran, AGR guy for many years, served North Carolina National Guard, and Matt works as our construction director, and we have a saying at Purple Heart Homes that, like, we can tell Matt's stress level by how high his hair is in the mornings, right? And it's because he runs his hands through his hair, and he's got this his hair is very tactile, and he manipulates it, and it stands up, and so when his stress level is high. So yesterday's his stress level was at DEFCON 1, right? I mean, is DEFCON 1 bad? Right, DEFCON 1's bad.
I think it's pretty bad.
That's bad, right? Yeah, he was at DEFCON 1 yesterday, but I do want to commend him because he did problem solving yesterday, and I was really impressed with the amount of patience that he showed on a particular project, and so I'm super proud of him. Just wanted to say hey to Matt. Good morning, buddy, and great work as our construction director. You're awesome.
He really goes out of the way to make sure the veterans know why we do this work every day. It's because of their service and because of their sacrifice, and he really wants to make sure that they know that they're loved and appreciated, and that's what's most important.
So there was a cool thing that happened last weekend down in Raleigh, and that's home of our guest today. We'll introduce him in a minute, but
first, let's get to our sponsors. Want to thank Cook's Headers, Welcome Home Vets, Lake Mountain Coffee, and our fellow friend and veteran, Dr. Grant Campbell. We do have a little change in our lineup this week, as seems to be trend with our Google document. The date was wrong last week, and I guess I had the guest lineup wrong for last week. We don't actually have Junior from Cook's Headers here with us this week. We got a special veteran here with us today, and we're happy to welcome him.
Yep.
Before we do, want to again just remind everybody we are live at the WSIC News Studios, and we will take live callers at the after the half break at the bottom half of the hour at 8:30, and that number you can call in on is 704-873-1400. And please, whether it's a question for our guests or whether it's a question about some of the work we do, feel free to give us a call. And I'll even add to that, if you want to share a story, or if you want to speak my love language and share some numbers.
Please don't.
I know we got an exceptional guest here with us in the studio. Also, Mr. Dave Childers.
Yes,
he is here with us, and he's brought some better than donuts. He brought some facts and statistics with him this morning.
He did.
So I'm really
Dave,
excited.
You're just feeding us. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
Right. He told me that out in the parking lot. He was like, I've got something for John in his love language. I've got a lot of numbers. So anyhow.
So this day in history, we got some really neat stuff.
Before we
here.
do that, we need to shout out our chapter in North Wake.
Oh yeah, let's do that.
So there's a doctor in Raleigh, Joe Sheehan, who he's a volunteer. He heads up our chapter up in the northern part of Wake County, and they did a fundraiser at the Bottle Shop. I think that's what it's called. But Woody and Wilcox are our friends that are our competing radio program.
Yeah, I don't think we're really competing.
I am driving
50,000 listeners every minute. We got maybe 7.
But anyhow, Woody and Wilcox have been friends of ours for a long time. They were friends with Dale, and they've been huge supporters of Purple Heart Homes. They drove to Raleigh to guest bartend at the Bottle Shop with Joe, and like people drove from Virginia down to Raleigh to come meet them, and it looked like a really good night.
Woody making your drink?
No,
No?
absolutely not. No.
You're not saying that it would be a wild concoction.
Well, you just never know with
You
that
just
guy.
never know.
Yeah, you just never know. So we just want to celebrate the success of that, and they're going to do great things down in Raleigh helping veterans in that area.
And, hey,
So
let's give
thank
you
you,
just
Joe
a call
Sheehan.
out to your pretty cool, awesome shirt there.
Yes, yes.
Veteran designed.
Yes. So if you look at, if you're on Facebook, we have T-shirts now. We have Putting the Pieces Back Together T-shirts, and we'll make those available on the Purple Heart Homes website for purchase, so that you can have a really cool T-shirt and be a cool guy or gal around town and support a veteran at the same time. So that'd be awesome.
Yeah, and I think we actually talked about maybe doing a little giveaway for our first live caller as well.
Oh,
So
we're gonna do? Is that today?
might as well
First
do it
live
today.
caller gets a
I
T-shirt.
mean, I don't have
as
a
long as
T-shirt
it's
and it's not on the Google document, so why not do it?
Well, John, you know how you love to operate outside of the boundaries, so appreciate
right.
that. Right, awesome. All right, so first caller gets a T-shirt. That'll be great, and we'll be looking forward to that. Wait a minute, does it?
704-873-1400. Let's make sure they got the phone number so they can call.
Yeah, and does it have to be a good question? Right? Does it have to be like an interesting question or an interesting caller?
I won't
Do
limit
we
it
have-
to numbers.
Right? Do we have discretion to go? No, I'm sorry, you don't get a T-shirt because that was a bad question.
No, I don't think we ought to do that.
All right.
So
All right, this
this
day
day-
in history. Let's do.
Yeah.
I want to do this one first, and then
All right, let's
that
do
one
it.
second. So
Let's do it. I like them.
this day in history, President Roosevelt back in 42 told General MacArthur to get out of the Philippines. Right, said evac. It was getting ugly, and so what ended up happening? Right, the Japanese then took over the Philippines, and a lot of Americans were left behind. And then in what ensued was known as the Bataan Death March, right? And every year, out in the desert Southwest, they do a Bataan Death March memorial. It's like a marathon. You can go ruck it, you can run it, but it's in the desert. And every year for the last however many years they've been doing it, survivors of the Bataan Death March have greeted the participants at the end of this thing. And we had, 2 years ago, we had the privilege of serving one of the surviving members of the Bataan Death March. And at the time, I think there was only 8 guys left that had marched in that. Bataan Death March was like a 80-mile march from across the Philippines, and it was just it was really brutal event that happened to our grandfathers and great grandfathers and stuff. And so, but this
It's amazing they even survived.
It's amazing they even survived, and then it ended up getting worse because they got put on ships and back across the Pacific Ocean back over to Japan, where they spent the rest of the war in Japanese prison camps. And so, but Paul Kirchum, who lives in Tucson, Arizona, reached out to Purple Heart Homes and needed some work at his house. Actually, his daughter reached out to us, and we flew Rob Harrell out there. We networked with so Paul and his wife, both 98 years old. His wife was physically unable to do things around the house. Their washer and dryer was in their basement. At 98 years old, Paul was going up and down, so he would have to crawl back up the stairs to bring the laundry up. So we had a company out there put in one of those stair lift things for him. But when Rob showed up at the house, Paul, he's 98 years old, he's outside sawing wood, not with a chainsaw, with like a handsaw. Like had logs set up on the thing. He's sawing wood, and told Rob first thing, he says, "Well, this is what I do for PT every morning."
One of the most interesting parts of that story, not that him sawing wood was not cool, but that was his PT.
Yeah.
But he also did the laundry.
Yeah.
His washer and dryer was in his basement.
Yeah.
And in order to get to his basement, he would set the laundry basket down.
Yep.
And he would scoot down on his butt one
Yep.
step at a time.
Yep.
That was the way he safely got up and down the steps.
Yeah, he's
And
an amazing guy.
Life changing putting that stair lift in for him, and just a great team, a lot of great supporters out there. And apparently we do have one early listener this morning. I see we've got a caller. Actually, there's 2.
Oh, my
And
gosh.
so as long as the
Somebody-
first one's not Parker, then maybe they might win a T-shirt.
Go ahead, caller. Who we got on the line?
All right, caller, who we got on the line this morning with us?
All right. Welcome to the show. Who we got on the line?
Oh, they got tired of waiting.
Oh man, they got cut off. No T-shirt giveaway.
So
the
the
T-shirts are safe.
instructions actually, those were premature listeners. The instructions were actually, we are going to take calls at the bottom half of the hour.
Right.
But inevitably, Parker was listening.
So let's define bottom half, which means
that's 8:30.
30, right? Okay.
8:30.
All right.
Yeah. So when we come
Failure
back
to
from
follow
break,
instructions. No T-shirt for you.
yeah, there we go. So back to this day in history. February 22nd, 1732, George Washington was born.
That's correct. George Washington's birthday.
Really interesting, in 1932, nearly 200 years later, the Purple Heart was revived as an award for those wounded or killed in action. It was an award that George Washington had started during the Revolutionary War. And a lot of people don't realize that award was actually created for the common soldier. Mm-hmm. Typically, awards were given to the officer ranks coming out of battle as battle identifiers, but this particular award was created for the common soldier for wounds and actions that they would receive in fighting the enemy. And so really cool date in history here, and again, how it was revived, and really is the reason that we have Purple Heart homes today.
Yeah.
And the reason that we have Putting the Pieces Back Together.
Sure. That
it's about helping those that have been injured in combat, not just physically, but in any way that they have been affected by combat, to be able to reintegrate the community's role in how we reintegrate those soldiers. And so,
awesome.
You know, another interesting, I found very cool, kind of funny, humorous fact about today in history. In 1902, a fist fight broke out in the Senate House between two senators. You'll never guess what it was over, but it was one senator accusing another senator of bias. Bias over a tariff tax.
Okay.
And so one got up and bloodied the other's nose.
Nice.
How funny would it be to see that today?
Oh, well, it
I wonder
happens in some places.
how the news media would cover that.
It would be awesome. I'd love to see that on YouTube and TikTok. That would be great. That would be fantastic.
A quote I had read here recently, Mark Twain said that history doesn't always repeat itself, but it sometimes rhymes.
Yeah, that's true.
I found that interesting, as today I was reading in history that in 1963, Moscow was warning the U.S. that an attack on Cuba would mean war.
Yeah.
And look at where we're at again today.
Yeah.
And just how history kind of maybe doesn't always repeat itself, but it's the same old song.
Yeah, it is.
So really cool.
It is. It's a troubling, some troubling news headlines coming out, and we're praying for peace in the world, and that things will be resolved without major conflict and large-scale loss of life. And we forget real quickly about how bad things can be, and hopefully cooler heads will prevail.
So let's introduce our guests who can maybe share a little more history with us and about their service and some of the things that they've been a part of and witnessed.
Yeah, we're super excited to welcome Colonel Retired Doug Mason. Was introduced to Doug through our friend David Childress. We have actually two Marine Corps veterans in the room with us, which is outside of our normal limit of having two Marines in one room. But Doug and I figured out we both graduated high school in 1983, so he's an 87 graduate of the United States Naval Academy. Chose to go on into the Marines. He served in the First Gulf War, OEF, OIF, all of the above, right? And even served as an instructor. Where, Doug?
At the Naval War College.
At the Naval War College. For some reason, I had it in my mind that he was an instructor at the
Academy. Was it just in your mind or on that Google Doc?
It was in my mind because I wrote it on the Google Doc, right? And so he corrected me when I came in this morning. But Doug, thank you so much for your service and for being here this morning. I did give Doug before we got in, I gave him a Rip It energy drink, which was affectionately known as the official energy drink of the global war on terror when we were there, because these things were ubiquitous. And that's a big word.
Wait a minute. Do Marines really need extra energy?
Yeah, they do, actually. The only problem is that, I have a big can of this now. It's a tall 16-ounce can, but back then you could only get them in half size. That they thought that would, limit the amount of intake, but they were wrong, because soldiers would just jam them in their rucks and carry them
in
on.
Iraq, we had Red Dragons.
Yeah. Well, you had these two. They were Red Dragons. They were from from Pakistan
Yeah.
or somewhere. But this is an American company. There's a really neat article that you can read about RET Energy in the Wall Street Journal a few years back. So, but anyhow, Doug, welcome to the show, and thanks for being here. We're grateful that you came on with us this morning. Can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself? Where'd you grow up? How'd you get in the Marine Corps? And all that.
Yeah, so thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
And I salute what you guys do. I listened to a couple of your old shows on the on the internet. The first one I listened to, you had a Gold Star wife on.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
SF wife.
Yeah,
who's
Nancy.
working for Tunnel to Towers. And that was a pretty heavy pretty heavy show. But,
Nancy's a special lady.
Yeah, she is. We love her. So.
yeah, so I was born and raised in Raleigh. My parents are Canadian. I'm a first-generation American.
Nice.
My
Thank you.
dad moved down to get his Ph.D. at NC State and realized that not every place in the world is cold and decided to stay.
Right,
So
right.
I was born in Raleigh at Rex Hospital and grew up in Raleigh, went to Ravenscroft High School, and went to the Naval Academy straight out of high school, and then joined the Marine Corps out of there. First duty station was 1st Battalion, 8th Marines down at Camp Lejeune, and I did a med float in Desert Storm with 1-8. Bunch of duty stations thereafter. I was a communications officer in the Marine Corps,
All right.
except for 2 police advisor tours, which was very strange for a non-combat arms guy to get selected for that.
Right.
One of those, the first one was in Al-Anbar province in Ramadi, and Dave knows what
Yeah.
I'm talking about. When I got selected for that, I didn't make deployment criteria for that because I had slated for battalion command, and it was going to be a year-long deployment, so I didn't have the legs to do the deployment and still take command. So I told my wife I definitely was not going because Lejeune was emptying out when they would do one of those deployments, and then Pendleton would empty out, and then Lejeune, just back and forth. And so I told my wife I wasn't going, and my boss called me in and said, "Hey, I want you to jump on this police advisor tour." And I was like, "Great, love to do it." I fished around for a compliment. I was like, "Sir, I just want to know why me? I'm a communications officer." And he said, "Well, frankly, Doug, you were the last unaccounted for lieutenant colonel on the East Coast."
What does unaccounted for mean? It's like
faces to places kind of things.
Yeah.
And so I got that first one. I got the second one because I didn't screw up the first one. The
Right.
second one was provincial police advisor in Helmand province,
Right.
living in a police station in Lashkar. So
Wow. Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, it's funny. I was told one time, it's like, as I was joining, said, you'll be a success in the military if you can do 3 things. It's be at the right time, at the right place, in the right uniform. If you do all that, you don't really have to know a whole lot. You'll go far. You'll make general someday. So, the last, where do you got last unaccounted for lieutenant colonel? That's fantastic.
Yeah, so I must have been out of uniform because I didn't make general. But
Yeah,
But
right.
anyway, I had to go home and tell my wife that I was now deploying after I had guaranteed her that I was not
course.
going on that one.
Of course.
And of course, I blamed it all on the Marine Corps.
Yes.
Gosh darn, the Marine Corps doing this to me. And,
That's right.
and we went to a unit Thanksgiving function that night, and we walked in, and my boss said, "Thank God I was able to get him this job. He's been standing on my desk begging to go over there." And I was like,
Hey, sir, stop. Yeah, you're going to get me in trouble. I bet you got an earful on the ride home that
did.
night. Yeah. You told me you didn't want to go. Yeah, there's something about us. It's weird, right? There's some part of us that's like, we don't want to go, but yeah, pick me. There's that give and take and the dichotomy between not wanting to leave our families, but and also not wanting to not do our part. Right.
Chap, it's interesting you bring that up, that so often that's also the case when you come home. And how many veterans have to deal with the pain of the memories, but yet they don't want to forget.
Yeah.
You don't want to forget the sacrifice,
Yeah.
but yet at the same time it's painful to remember.
Yeah.
And it's really puts the veteran in a tough place to be able to have people relate to them that haven't been there,
Yeah.
be able to understand how they need to talk, but yet they don't really want to talk.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think a lot of times too, I miss my time on active duty. I don't want to go back, right? I don't want to go back and be on active duty again, but I miss it. I just miss the people, right?
Simplicity.
Yeah. Never had to worry about what I was going to wear in the morning, right? It's like right there. Oh, okay, I got to wear. Oh, I'll wear the green thing again. So, yeah, it's awesome. Hey, Doug, what was your favorite duty station across your career?
Wow. So I've been stationed in a bunch of places, and I think probably between Monterey, California,
Not bad,
and Newport, Rhode Island.
Yeah.
Living on the coast in those kind of resort towns.
Yep.
I love both of them.
Yeah.
But I was stationed in 29 Palms, California for 3 years. So out in the desert, right near NTC.
Yep.
Been there.
And I had 3 little kids at the time. So just that was not the greatest living conditions in the world, being in the high desert. But being there with 3 little kids, I think those are probably the best memories.
Now, how old are your kids now?
So I think the oldest is 31, and the youngest now Second Lieutenant Mason. He's down in flight school in Corpus Christi. He's 22, 23, something like that.
Yeah. So is he the only one that's in the military?
He is.
Yep, man. Well, you're proud of all of them. Yeah. That's awesome.
So you mentioned Mojave Desert. We did our rotation out at NTC, and certainly it is the high and hot desert. I remember on the way out there, they told us, those that had been there in a rotation prior, they said, if it rains out there, we'll be lucky. And so I remember the first day that we went out into the field and left the little setup camp where you kind of pull everybody together, and it started raining. And it rained for all of about 3 seconds. They were the biggest raindrops I'd ever seen, and it got so hot after that. I mean, it was immediately like a heat wave come through. And when it's pushing 100 degrees, you don't think a heat wave can come through, but it can get hot out there in the Mojave Desert. Let me tell you. And so
Iraq was a lot like that too. In times, I remember one time it rained mud. Right, so it was a dust storm. It was a dust storm, and it came in with a cold front, and I went outside, and there was just like it was red mud all over. Everything was falling out of the sky. It was just so weird.
Yeah.
Hey, Doug. So tell us about this, and we're going to come up on a break here in a few minutes. But who was the best leader that you ever served with, and what was it made them great?
Again, that's kind of a tough one because when I was commissioned in 1987. If you think about the guys who were the lieutenant colonels, battalion commanders at that time, they were all in about the 20-year mark.
Yeah.
So they had been commissioned in 1967. They were all Vietnam veterans.
Right.
And so there were a whole bunch of Navy Cross recipient, Purple Heart recipient studs who were our leadership at the time.
Yeah.
There was a guy named Wayne Rollins was my first battalion commander, Navy Cross recipient, Force Recon Marine in Vietnam from South Carolina. Had 2 fingers on his right hand from a farming accident, so you got the Boy Scout salute whenever you walk by. He had the world sit-up record. He did the PFT pace for 16 hours. Which is crazy if you think about that.
See, wait a minute, back up.
Yeah.
He did sit-ups for 16 hours?
And at the pace you would do for your physical fitness test.
16 hours.
So that's like almost, I think, about 30 to 35 sit-ups a minute.
Well, I didn't mean to get into numbers for you.
Right.
But just for our listeners to understand, right?
Yeah, he always got to bring numbers
that's a
into
lot of sit-ups.
Oh, my gosh. How did he get? I mean, like
you can Google him. He's on Wikipedia.
I'm gonna look that up. I'm just thinking about my head, just from a physical fitness perspective, like the fueling, right? How do you keep from cramping, right? You're just having horrible abdominal cramps after doing that.
I know how you do it. Every time you do a sit up, you got to get a sip of Rip It.
You got to, yeah. Well, no, I think that would definitely cause cramping.
That was pre-Rip It.
That was pre-Rip It. Oh my gosh, 16 hours. That is incredible.
He was an amazing leader. Another guy named Ray Smith, another Navy Cross recipient, who's still around. Unfortunately, Wayne Rollins died last month, as a matter of fact.
Wow.
Ray Smith was in the whole Easter invasion, of Vietnam back in 1973, and that was where he was awarded his Navy Cross. And John Ripley, who was also he was the guy that blew up the bridge at Dong Ha pretty much single-handedly, another Navy Cross recipient. But all those guys were scattered across the landscape when I was a lieutenant, and it was pretty formative.
Yeah, that it must have been something to as just, like just to learn and hear stories and see life in action from people that experienced that. So.
Well, we are on the bottom of the hour for our break. So when we come back, we
take
will
your calls,
take some
give a
callers.
T-shirt away.
We're live at the WSIC News Studios, and you can call in at 704-873-1400. back live with Putting the Pieces Back Together, John and Brad, and our
Good
special
morning again.
guest, Doug. And also in the studio, we have with us Dave Childers. And we forgot to talk about Dita earlier. She's a little over here just kind of eyeballing me in Dave's arms.
Dita is
"You
Dave's
forgot me."
service dog. She's got an awesome tactical kit on today, too, as well. So.
Yeah, I heard she was out chasing squirrels.
She does everything, man. She does everything. She keeps everybody in line. She always greets me with a smile every time I see her. So she's fantastic.
Getting it done. So we will take some live callers here in the bottom half of the hour.
Free T-shirt to the first interesting call. Did we caveat with that? The first interesting call.
Yeah,
that's a lot of pressure to put on somebody.
That is a lot of pressure.
All right,
we got
free
a lot of
T-shirt to the
interesting
first
people
caller
out there.
Yeah.
But calling number 704-873-1400. Call with a question, a story.
Yep.
Brad, you had mentioned earlier you talked about the Baton Death March and some of the older veterans that we helped. Here recently, we got a call from an individual in the community and said, hey, look, I got a 101-year-old World War II veteran that needs a wheelchair ramp, and our men's group wants to go out and help put a wheelchair ramp on for this veteran. The VA, it's going to take them a little longer to get it done, and so I encouraged them to fill out the application, and we'd provide them a ramp that they could go out and install. All kinds of different ways that we can get involved and help as a member of the community. And so I want to encourage those folks that know those older veterans that know that they have a need. Please reach out. Maybe it's not just to Purple Heart Homes, but you might reach out to other organizations as well. And in many cases, they don't have a lot of time left. And while the VA is a great organization and facility and provide services and care, and in some cases provide wheelchair ramps, maybe they can't get to them quite fast enough. And so there's a way that you can get involved and help put the pieces back together to ensure that those veterans have a safe access into their home, which is really where they all want to be.
Yeah, and if we get an application in from a World War II veteran, that goes to the front of the line every single time. So if you do know someone out there that's in need, let us know, and we'll be glad to do that. You can check us out at phhusa.org. So,
Thanks.
Well, Doug, we're just going to continue in this awesome discussion that we're having with you. So, everybody, we've got Colonel Retired Doug Mason with us today. Doug served in the United States Marine Corps for a long time. How many years of service?
So I think, not that I was counting, 29 years, 6 months, 11 days. But they don't include the Naval Academy in that.
Right. So. Yeah. When you started to become a short timer, did you guess like I don't care anymore. You can't tell me what to do. I'm out. And did you get like kind of short timer syndrome?
No.
Dadgummit, I've got it already, and I've got like 18 months left, 16 months left in the reserves, and I've already got short timer syndrome. What's the secret to not getting that?
Well, the secret is you still got people working for you.
Okay, all right. You had to do that, right? You had to bring that up. That's awesome. I'm trying not to. Hey, tell me about what's your funniest memory from the Marine Corps?
I don't know. I'll tell you a sea story.
All right.
When I was a provincial police advisor in Helmand Province, we're living in the police station there in Lashkar-Gah, 8 of us. I had the rest of us were over at the British Mobe. Eight Marines, actually 7 Marines and a sailor, because we had our corpsman with us, and so our interpreters. And there was a uprising at the Helmand police station. I mean the Helmand prison. Sorry, and the prisoners took it over, and so it was a major crisis because they were pretty bad guys in the prison. Yeah. It was down. Near the river, if I remember correctly where it was, right near the ANCOP, Afghan National Civil Order Police barracks. And so no Americans were allowed to be down there because they didn't want us on TV, local or international kind of TV. But my boss sent me and my team down there to see what we could do to assist. And so they decided they needed to assault the prison and take it back. And the go signal was going to be 2 F-16s from Kandahar flying over at, treetop level with afterburners on.
Right.
To scare the prisoners and let everybody know it was time to go. Well, they never passed that word to the police that we're going to assault this prison. And so came time, they were getting ready to go. Everybody was in position. These 2 F-16s come screaming overhead, rumble your belly kind of low. Yeah. And the police broke and ran because they were not.
They were scared too.
Nobody told them.
Yeah. Right.
So they they reassembled themselves, and somehow they had gotten their hands on some tear gas grenades, but they had no gas masks. So they had police up on top of the roof of the prison and guys waiting to break in, and they decided to fire a couple dozen tear gas canisters at the prison. And, of course, they broke and ran again because
Right.
they had no
They didn't need
exposure to
gas
tear
masks.
gas.
Right. Yeah. Why are my eyes burning?
They finally got their stuff together again and decided to breach the front door, but they just assumed they could knock the lock off and get in. Of course, it had all been barricaded. So as soon as they tried that, it didn't work, and it kind of devolved into a shouting match between the provincial police chief and this leader in the prison, who calling each other names.
Talking about your mama.
They were. As a matter of
So the lesson in this story is how poor communications, right, can cause you to fall into chaos.
That is just
That's
brilliant. For those of you who don't know, if you've ever had a F-16 come low and hot over your head, it is the most frightening thing that can happen to you if you don't know it's coming. I mean, you think the world's ending, right? Oh, my God. That's a fantastic story. I'm so glad we had you on today. I'll be thinking about that all day long, for sure. Hey, what's your greatest lesson from your time in service?
I think the greatest lesson for me is do something you enjoy doing for as long as you can.
Yeah.
Right. So my sister, mentioned to me one time about she hated going to work. How did I feel about work? And I said, well, I think that was the secret sauce for me. Is it was never work.
Yeah.
I can't believe I got paid to do it for 34 years. If you include the Naval Academy in there.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my lesson. And if you're not enjoying it, then find something else to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Love what you do, and you'll never work a day in your life. That kind of thing. So, yeah. I agree with that. I think I remember when I got tasked to go serve in the special operations world. I was not like a cool guy at all, right? I had no experience in that. I guess I was fairly decent at being a chaplain, and so I got asked to come and work there. And I remember driving up to my dad when I was 5 years old. We watched the Green Berets on a little black and white TV, 1970, 71, on our back porch, little tiny portable black and white television set, and we had rabbit ears with aluminum foil, so we could pick up Channel 3 out of Charlotte pretty good. And then I remember my dad telling me, maybe we watched that movie, and I just thought John Wayne was cool, and but my dad told me, so maybe you can do something like that someday, and I remember when I pulled up to 3rd Special Forces Group at Fort Bragg the first time, that memory of my dad saying that to me from years and years and years, decades before, kind of just jumped into my head, and I like you, I just couldn't believe that I was getting to do that. I got to do it. I was afforded the great privilege of being able to serve in that community. So I appreciate that understanding. How about transition to civilian life? What's that been like for you after that became identity-wise, right? How does that work for somebody that's been steeped in that for 34 years? What's that been like for you?
So it's been strange.
Yeah.
I signed up to be a defense contractor when I retired, and I did it for a year, and I loathed that job. I hated it. Basically, they wanted me to call friends that I'd known for 30 years and try and sell them something.
Right.
So I quit after a year, and I haven't done anything since, really.
Right.
I do a little contract work for the Marine Corps where I show up for exercises in 29 Palms or Camp Pendleton or Camp Lejeune, and I offer my sage advice about what I'm seeing. So
Right.
So for me, the transition, I bought 30 acres here in Iredell County.
That's right.
Up in Union Grove, and I bought some chickens and some guinea hens, and my wife has horses. I told Dave the story. Every time I went to Iraq and Afghanistan, my wife bought a horse, right? So there was no family discussion. I would just show up back home, and there was a horse.
Yeah.
So we had the base stables at Camp Lejeune, but I had to find some place to put them when I retired, which is why I ended up here. And I've planted 28 apple trees, and I got honeybees last spring. So
yeah,
I'm just trying to do some things, self-sufficiency kind of things.
Yeah.
And I think that's been my way of coping with not being around Marines every day.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah. Horses are really good for your soul. They're like giant service dogs,
We've got an upcoming guest lined up for
Katie,
the show.
Katie's going to be on here in March, and she has a equine therapy program that she does for veterans down in Mooresville and Soul to Soul, and she's amazing and got a real heart for veterans, and so we're super excited about having her here on next month. And I do know a lot of my friends have become involved with in equine therapy. I went up to a place in outside of D.C. That a former Navy veteran, EOD guy, Ken Falk, started a program called Warrior Path and at a place called Boulder Crest Retreat, and they employed equine therapy as a part of that program. And so when I went up there, the lady that runs it, she had her horses. My wife and I were up there. We were just observing because I was trying to get some of my Green Berets up there, and she said, "Well, this is what we do." I thought it was going to be about horse riding. It's not about horse riding, with equine therapy. It's about being around horses, right, and leading them around and talking to them. And she laid down in front of this horse on the ground, and then the horse stepped over her, right, and I was like, "Well, I'm out." Right. Gosh, I'm not going to let a 1,200-pound animal step up for me. And she was like, "No, it's about trust," right? And that was kind of one of the things that they did with the veterans that came through there. And so in your transition, and I know this just as, dealing with veterans who have gotten out or transitioning is about mission, right? And so mission becomes, it was so ingrained in us when we were on the job. Like, we had a very clear, defined mission every single day, right? There was no question about what we do. How do you rediscover mission once you're on this side of that?
So I think, again, I get back to doing something you like doing. So it turns out I like not working full time.
Right.
And I like messing around on a property and animal husbandry and all that kind of stuff. And so that has become my mission. So if I was younger and had to get a job and needed to still support a family and all that kind of stuff, then my mission would be to find that right job and do the best I could at it and make it important to me. So.
Well, one of the things that we do with people that either listening live or they'll be listening later on a recorded version, perhaps there's a veteran or someone out there that's just struggling with all of that, struggling with transition. What would if you had one thing you could say to them, what would that be as a Marine Corps colonel and now retired Marine Corps colonel?
Yeah, I'd say find somebody to talk to. And that's really the hardest thing to do is find somebody who's going to understand what you're saying, and you can trust them to take in what you're saying. So find somebody to talk to, and it might seem hard at first and daunting to find that person or that venue to talk, but there's a lot of veterans out there in every town. And if you can't find a local veteran, go into an American Legion place or a VFW hall. If you can't find somebody there, get on the phone. There's resources available through the VA and through other places where you can find somebody to talk to. And just getting something off your chest is probably the most important thing to do. I mean, we know the statistics. More servicemen and women have died from their own hands than died in Iraq and Afghanistan combined.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's a horrible statistic.
It's too many.
And I feel like if they had found somebody to talk to, most of them, I mean, a lot of them are carrying baggage they didn't deserve to carry.
Yeah,
they're carrying other people and other people's baggage. But find somebody to talk to,
That could be through service organizations. Finding some purpose to connect through a service organization often leads to the opportunity to meet veterans and other people that are like-minded, where you can develop those relationships and develop that trust, where you can have that opportunity to share some of those burdens. It's maybe not that you just got to go out and start that conversation right away, but like you said, Doug, through the VA, there's vet centers, which is a great place to go, where they provide some of that safe and trusted place to have the immediate conversation. But then getting involved in charities and churches and in your community allows you to meet those folks that maybe have been where you've been. And you mentioned contractors. So oftentimes they get overlooked in the aspect of the military, right? But they play an integral role as civilian participants to support the military efforts, and so they've been there. It's a whole other segment that has been there and been a part of a military operation that can help understand and relate to maybe what you're going through, and so with that, there's plenty of room there to find somebody, and I share with all my friends. I've got a battle buddy now that's going through a tough time that, I tell him, say, hey, let's just get together, let's just talk. And he just tells me, I'm not ready yet.
Yeah.
When you're ready, I don't care what time it is, whether it's 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
I'm here. My phone is on. My door is open. We'll put coffee on. We'll sit down. I'll listen. And that's so important for us also to make ourselves available, right? That maybe you're not ready right now, but know that you have a village around you that is ready to listen, and that's where the community really has to step up and take an ownership and responsibility of their role in the reintegration process.
Yeah. Well, Henry Nouwen wrote a book called The Wounded Healer, which is just a phenomenal book about people that end up becoming healing forces within their communities were at one time wounded themselves, right? And so who you'll find, right, like people that are making an impact, and if refound mission, if you dig kind of back into the end of the suitcase, you find the impact points that they've gone through, but then somehow they've learned how to transition from that and refocus, find a new mission, find a new team. One of the things that we do at Reboot Combat Recovery, which is a course that's available here in Iredell County and really all over the country, is reintroduce veterans to their faith and to a new team, and then ultimately into acts of service, right, where they begin to give back again. What we find with most veterans that are in crisis is that they're in isolation. And when people are isolated and they're not communicating with others, it's very difficult to find your way out of the darkness that way. But it's a whole lot easier when you got a team around you that care about you and in a trusted environment. And a lot of veterans find that in a room full of other veterans that are interested in not only their own growth but the growth of their friends around them. So that's one of the things that we're trying to accomplish with that. And Dave Childers has been a part of that, and about 85 other veterans in Iredell County have been a part of that, and thousands across the country, and it just continues to grow. So really excited about that. So Doug, what's next for you on the micro farm? You got big plans of growth? Are you buying more pieces of property, or are you just going to stay at 30 and you got cows coming? What's going on?
So I talked to Dave about this ahead of time. And any animal that comes on my piece of property gets a name.
Right.
So cows are not. I broached that with the wife.
Right.
Let's get a couple cows and put them in the freezer at the end of the year.
Sure.
And that's not happening. So
what do you name your animals after? Do you have do you give them military names, or you just
whatever pops in my head?
Right, Ralphie or right, yeah. Right.
So we had a cat show up right before that last snowstorm, a little kitten. So if you can make it across a couple acres of pasture and past the dogs and past the foxes and get eye contact with my wife,
right,
you're in.
That's right.
You
made it through the wire.
Bills and food for the rest of your life.
That's right.
It's a good thing.
My dad had on his farm growing up. We had cows but he had a donkey and 2 goats, And so he named this is dating it, right? So he named one of the goats Bill Clinton, and one of the goats Hillary, and then he named the donkey Ross Perot because it had big ears. And we had to, Ross Perot had to go, and then ultimately we had to get rid of Bill Clinton because he was causing too much trouble. And we had to drive him across the county in the back of a pickup truck, and I had him by a rope. Right? He smelled so bad. Right? That goat smelled so bad. And then, so my dad told me, he said, if you help me move this goat, I'll take you and your cousin out to lunch, right? And so we had this goat. We were holding this thing in the back of this pickup truck. We took it to this other farmer, and then we went to like a country dining place, right, where they serve country style steak and mashed potatoes and green beans. And so we're sitting down, and there was like a ladies' auxiliary meeting at a table next to us, and we all smelled like goat, right, because we've been grabbing this thing, and I noticed them ladies. They kept looking over my shoulder. They were sniffing, right, And my dad was like, "I think we better go. I think we smell too bad to be in here." So anyhow, moral of the story is, if you got a goat, don't ride with it. Right?
So my wife recently got a rescue horse. Mm-hmm. It's got one eye, so it's constantly constantly looking around because it's worried.
What's the one-eyed horse's name?
Bella.
Bella. Okay. All right.
It came with that name.
It came with that name. Right. You didn't give it some disparaging
but
name.
You can't ride Bella because she's so skittish.
Right.
Because she can't see anything.
Right.
So she's just a pasture ornament and a vet bill. So.
Right. And a vet bill. Yeah. I'm sure that comes with the territory. So.
Well, the vet comes and does a barn call a couple times a year.
Right.
She's happy to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
awesome,
really
man.
great.
Awesome.
Union Grove's a beautiful, beautiful area, and you picked a great place to retire.
Yeah, it is a great spot.
Yeah.
So, got word that you may join us for our first Reboot Advanced class next week. So we're really excited about having you there, and we've got at least one. We got 2 Marines in that class, so you'll be at home with a couple of Marines in there.
I think you already got about 7 or 8 signed up.
Yeah, we got several coming. So if anybody's interested, this is a little different than the other class we got. But if anybody's interested, you can reach out to me on Facebook, and I can get you the information. And
so
good to go.
So just one more thing, we were talking about it ahead of time. I feel like I need to give Bill Journey a shout out.
Yeah,
right?
please do.
So the commanding general of 2 Marine Expeditionary Force right now down at Camp Lejeune. So the 60,000 Marines at Cherry Point and Camp Lejeune and down to Beaufort, South Carolina, the CG is Lieutenant General Bill Journey, who's from Olin.
Yeah.
North Iredell High School
North
graduate.
Iredell High School graduate. That's right. Yeah. He's been in since we got out of high school.
All right.
Local boy done good.
We have a caller here, and we're down to 2 minutes. So
Who we got on the line? Let's make it quick. You win a T-shirt. They hung up
They
on
hung
us.
up again.
Oh, nobody wants a T-shirt. These are fabulous T-shirts.
Well, I think what happens is when they call in, we're kind of midstream of a conversation. They get put on hold, and they don't know that they're on hold.
Well, we got about 1 minute to take a caller. So if you want to call in and get a T-shirt or say hi to Colonel Doug, you can do that. And next week we are in process of having our guest on next week. So we don't have an announcement, but we've got some folks waiting in the wings to confirm that. And so really excited about the show going to an hour, and we thank you all for tuning in with us
Here's
every
our
week.
caller.
Oh, caller, go ahead. Who we got on the line?
Hey guys, it's James.
Hey, James.
Nobody else wants to call you. I will.
Oh, well, you're one of our faithful listeners. We're thankful for you, brother.
Awesome. James, you win a T-shirt, but we're going to need to get a bigger size, I think, because you're a giant.
For the listening audience, James is a Operation Iraqi Freedom veteran, and James, we're thankful for your service and appreciate you.
All right. I'm writing it down. We've got a T-shirt for you, James.
Yeah.
So.
All right, we are ready to close up the show here for the day, and we just thank you all for listening. Thank you for joining us, Colonel, and thank you for choosing to settle in here in Iredell County, and just for all you do. And
super grateful. Thank you for being here. It was really meaningful.
Dave, thanks for joining us again today, and look forward to bringing out some of these numbers and information about our contractors that support our military.
That's right.
Show.
Yeah, it's your love language. So thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll see you next week.